YouTube, the Golden State Warriors have been criticized by their own fan base, as well as many other fans throughout the NBA community this offseason in 2024 for not acquiring another star player to pair along with your Hall of Fame point guard Steph Curry, the greatest shooter of all time. There were many trade rumors about guys like Paul George, Larry Markkinen, and Brandon Ingram. So far, none of them have happened, and actually Larry Markkinen is off of the table this season as he signed a massive $200+ million contract with the Utah Jazz. And one of the things that does, I believe, is allows him not to be traded until the 2025-2026 NBA season. So Larry Markkinen off the table. You lose Klay Thompson in free agency. And while you fail to acquire a second star on this team to pair with Steph Curry, there are some valid criticisms you could make there. But in this video, we're not really going to talk about all of that. We're going to be talking about the moves they did make, not the ones that they haven't been able to make, okay? So this is a Warriors deep dive for the upcoming 2024-2025 NBA season. We're going to be diving through their offseason, every single move they've made. And I actually think a lot of them are super good. This might be a hot take, but I think the Warriors are going to have an excellent 2025 NBA season, despite not having that second superstar or star player alongside Steph Curry. I actually think, all things considered, this team has done very well for themselves in adding depth pieces alongside Steph Curry, which will boost their chances in the Western Conference next season. And who knows, maybe by the deadline, a move will be made to acquire another star. But right now, things look quiet, but that can change in a hurry, as we all know as NBA fans. The Warriors are back in 2025, and I'm going to talk about it in this video. Warriors fans, I know you might not agree with this take, but I think you got better this offseason, and I'm going to explain all of it in this video. Let's get right into the deep dive, folks. So we're going to start with the offseason, and that includes multiple categories, okay? So re-signings, additions, and departures is the first thing I'm going to be talking about, and then we'll move on to the draft, and then we'll move on to the roster deep dive after all that's done. And through the roster deep dive and stuff like that, I'll be sprinkling in my takes of why I think this team got better. So we'll start with the re-signings, and maybe a good thing for Warriors fans, there actually weren't any, okay? So we can kind of skip right past that category. For the additions category, you made 3 excellent additions, and we're going to start with Kyle Anderson. And Kyle Anderson actually being a part of the Klay Thompson trade that you sent him to the Mavericks with, Timberwolves getting in on the action, Kyle Anderson being involved in the trade. This was a massive deal for many teams involved, including my 76ers, and Kyle Anderson having a big role on a Western Conference Finals team last year with the Minnesota Timberwolves. Slow-mo is his nickname, and it tracks with his play style. But I will say, a lot of people are clowning on this addition for the Warriors, not really fully understanding what Kyle Anderson's role could be on this team, what kind of player he is, okay? Kyle Anderson has a memeable jump shot. Let's just get that out of the way. That is not going to dictate his season next year. Think of Kyle Anderson as your Draymond Green substitution, okay? So I think Kyle Anderson's role on this team is going to be very similar to Draymond Green as a point forward defensive type of player who can, rebound, shoot on occasions, handle the basketball, and just be kind of a do-it-all high basketball IQ utility piece on both ends. And I actually think Kyle Anderson is a good substitution for Draymond Green because, as I mentioned, they have similar skill sets. Draymond Green does a lot of things way better, but the passing for the position is really what you should be focusing on right now because Kyle Anderson is an excellent playmaker for that power forward position. I actually think Kyle Anderson will be the first substitute for Draymond Green. So basically at all times you have highly intelligent offensive players that give a ton of effort on defense, and when Draymond Green subs out, Kyle Anderson will come in and just basically replace the value on a little bit of a smaller scale. I do think he's like Draymond Green light, and that's why you will substitute him in and out for Draymond Green. I think this is a great move. Now you have a guy coming from the second unit most likely who's going to basically just slide right into that Draymond Green role throughout the game. So I think this is a great move for the Golden State Warriors. I love Kyle Anderson as an addition. Makes a ton of sense for me. Buddy Hield was also involved in the Klay Thompson trade, and as we know, Buddy Hield, one of the greatest shooters actually of all time. I know that sounds crazy, but it's not if you look at the numbers. And I could tell you as a Sixers fan, having watched Buddy Hield every game he was with us last year, this is the real deal from behind the arc. I mean, you could basically say, you could make a case that he kind of replaces Klay Thompson's shooting value next season. He's a little bit of a different kind of shooter, right? Like Klay Thompson, I think, is able to get those threes off, a lot better over different kinds of matchups. I think Buddy Hield is not exactly a one-to-one replacement for Klay Thompson. I watched a ton of him last season, and while his efficiency from three-point range is all-time great, he can shoot it at a high volume. My point is that when Buddy Hield gets in a rhythm and he's feeling confident, he is maybe as good of a shooter as anybody I've ever seen, maybe other than Steph Curry. When he is not super involved in in the offense at times. He can pass out of threes and things like this. I'm not trying to knock Buddy Hield. Again, he's an all-time great shooter. For my Sixers last season, he competed a ton on the defensive end. I do think he adds a little bit more playmaking upside than Klay Thompson, but I also think people are saying this is a one-to-one comparison. I just kind of disagree. But I think if Buddy Hield is in the right spots and he's open on those three-pointers, he's going to knock them down as good as anyone in the league. It's just that there are certain threes that he won't take confidently, and I think that's a little bit different than Klay Thompson. And I don't think, at least from what I've seen, he's as good of a movement type of shooter. And that could be different in the Warriors offense. That could be different next season. But I just think it is a Klay Thompson light, right? Like, you're gonna get the shooting value in some way or another. It's just gonna be a little bit less dynamic. I don't know if I hope I explained that correctly, but I love Buddy Hield, and I think to put another shooter on the floor like that, he's gonna get a ton of open shots with the Warriors next season. They have probably the best system I've ever seen to be able to get open shooters, and Buddy Hield's no exception. He moves well without the ball, and hopefully, if you're a Warriors fan, he can provide similar value to Klay Thompson in that regard as far as high volume, high efficiency shooting. You also signed one of my favorite Sixers, DeAnthony Melton. You took two Sixers guards from me, and you guys are gonna love DeAnthony Melton. Melton last season had a significant back injury that sidelined him for most of the season. In my time with the Sixers, he was one of our more reliable players on both ends of the floor. This is probably one of the best defenders at his size in the entire league. For a smaller guard, he is going to provide immense defensive value, okay? He's, probably going to be your best guard defender on the team. He is a knockdown catch and shoot guy from three-point range, okay? He is a guy that has a little bit of playmaking upside as well. I mean, he's not necessarily, Chris Paul or anything who we'll talk about in a second, but he can, provide some playmaking value off the dribble. And I think his 3-and-D value is going to be so important next to Steph Curry. I actually think he's probably your starting two guard next to Steph Curry. We'll have to see how healthy he looks next season. But if he is like the DeAnthony Melton I saw throughout most of the time with my Sixers on the floor, you guys are getting an absolute steal in free agency, and you're just going to love DeAnthony Melton so much. I can't say enough good things about the guy. One of the more consistent 3-and-D guards you're going to see in this entire league. And again, probably a very smart call to pair him next to Steph Curry for the defensive value and the knockdown catch and shoot opportunities. So that's pretty much it for the additions, right? So you get two valuable guards to come in and shoot consistently and at a high volume and high efficiency from the three. You're going to love DeAnthony Melton so much. And then Buddy Hield, who hopefully can provide similar value as far as three-point shooting for this team than Klay Thompson did, as well as Kyle Anderson, who is basically your Draymond Green substitution throughout a game, in my opinion. And these are all three of these great moves for the Golden State Warriors. These are three high-value role players that are going to be able to be in a playoff rotation, in my opinion. So, three big W's there for the Warriors. For the departures, you have Chris Paul, right? And he is waived because he was on a big contract. And, I guess the pairing didn't really work out as you would hope last season. Chris Paul spending a lot of the season injured. But I will say, when he did play, he was pretty valuable and pretty impactful for the Warriors as a great playmaker and positive scorer. But yeah, that contract was pretty big. And I think you replace him pretty well. And I think you have pieces in place to where, that loss isn't going to be massive for you guys. I don't think losing Chris Paul is necessarily the worst thing in the world for this team. Dario Saric departs via free agency with the Denver Nuggets. And I actually think Dario played super well with you guys last season. I thought he had a good season for you if you're the Warriors, as kind of a rotation big. He was able to shoot the three pretty well. He was able to offensive rebound pretty well. I thought he, slid in pretty nicely to this lineup. But, I will say the big man is probably my biggest concern for this team. And I think losing Dario Saric is, at the end of the day, could be a big loss, offensively primarily. I mean, you do have two solid bigs. We'll get into that later with the roster deep dive. But as far as like Dario Saric's role last season, I think you do get another big forward or big wing in Kyle Anderson, who maybe could adapt to some of those pick and roll finishing abilities or offensive rebound, kind of stuff, right? Kind of a low volume 3-point shooting guy that you can look to towards the top of the key at times. We'll see what happens with the Dario Saric minutes and role. I think it is a situation where, he was a band-aid type of player for you guys. Actually played well last season, but, I don't think it's necessarily the end of the world either. So we'll get into all that big man stuff later. But Klay Thompson departs via sign and trade with the Mavericks. And, obviously this is a big loss, no matter how you look at it. I know Golden State fans were kind of done with Klay Thompson, and I know he scored 0 points in an elimination game, but at the end of that play-in tournament. But listen, man, Klay Thompson, one of the best shooters ever. He had a 4-ring run with this team, and I'm sure, there are some sentimental things about Klay Thompson with the Warriors, but, he felt disrespected by the front office's lack of confidence in him moving forward with the contract offer they gave him. At the end of the day, I just think it's a situation where, both teams, it's time to move on, and it's probably bittersweet for Warriors fans, I would imagine. Make sure you guys let me know down in the comments. I know they were, a little bit frustrated with Klay Thompson his play throughout the last year or so. And, I just think it's a good move to move on for both parties. You do replace a little bit of the shooting value with Buddy Hield, with DeAnthony Melton. The guard depth is not a problem on this team by a long shot with these free agent additions. And so I think you get decent value to replace him. But, Klay Thompson's an all-time great player. And clearly the chemistry of this team is going to have to scramble to try to figure out that type of chemistry with these new guys, because as you know, Steph, Klay, and Dre, probably the best chemistry trio in NBA history. So hopefully one of these guys can come in and play as well as Klay Thompson did next to those guys, even with Klay's diminished production. It'll be interesting to see how it works out. But, Klay, again, I think it's just, time to move on for both sides, and that's just kind of the way it goes. So overall, you lose Klay Thompson, but you get two rotation guards back for him, and both of them can shoot at a exceptional rate. DeAnthony Melton is probably going to be one of your more versatile guards that will play a ton of minutes. Hopefully he can be healthy next season with that back injury. Buddy Hield replaces Klay Thompson's shooting value, maybe a little bit of a smaller scale. You lose Dario Saric, but you get Kyle Anderson back for a, he'll probably play the 4. So I think overall, you really did a great job of replacing value for guys you were losing. As far as Chris Paul, I think that just wasn't a great fit regardless of whether you lose him or not. I just don't know if that was the greatest fit on this team. And I think, with everything in hindsight, this was not a bad offseason. It wasn't necessarily a great offseason either, considering you didn't necessarily, gain a superstar player or anything like that, or, add to this team on a level like that. But I think you did, lose some high impact players, and you did a great job of replacing them. And I actually think some of these guys would be better fits anyway. So, we're going to talk about later, but the biggest reason I think this team improves is the jump that some of these young guys are going to take, like Brandin Podziemski and Jonathan Kuminga. It's hard for me not to talk about this roster, but one last thing I'll say, just to explain my take before it gets too long in the video where people just start commenting without watching the end. Probably the biggest reason I think they're going to get better is because of those two guys taking a big leap next season, as well as I think you can expect a massive bounce back season from Andrew Wiggins. And if Andrew Wiggins can play, a lot better than he did last year, which I think obviously he can, or anywhere, close to where he was in the finals in 2022 during that playoff run, that's your second player. That's your two-way versatile player that is going to take a lot of those second best player responsibilities on both ends of the floor. I think Andrew Wiggins comes back hungry and ready to do that next season. So hopefully if that can happen, as well as the big leap from your, two young guys, Podziemski and Kuminga, there's no way you can tell me that this team isn't better than they were last year, considering all those things. And not only that, you bring in guys to replace the guys you lost. And I actually think strength in numbers is a little bit better for the Warriors than, just one Klay Thompson. Now you have like 3 guards that are able to do a lot of different things for you. So I think from night to night, you're going to see better impact on that level. I think it's having so much depend on Klay Thompson last season was a weakness of this team. And now I think it's a lot more predictable to say, hey, either DeAnthony Melton, Brandin Podziemski, or Buddy Hield, like only one of them has to have like a really great game for us to win. There's a good chance that all 3 of them do their job good enough to where that happens. So like, I just think instead of one Klay Thompson having, 3 options of guys that are capable to step up night to night from that guard position, I just don't really see the issue of why that you would think they got worse in that regard. I get that the second, star is, a thing, and I understand why that could be a concern. Steph can't do it all, right? And we've seen him more or less have to do it all, but I just think, I think it's important to wait and see how these new players impact the team for the start of the season. I know the West is super deep and super tough, but I think Andrew Wiggins and these young guys are so much of an X factor that it's hard to predict how good they're going to be next season until we see all of these pieces on the floor together playing in unison. Coach Kerr is going to get them ready to play better than maybe anyone and better, harmonize better than anyone. So it'll be interesting. I just think they got better in that regard though. So, let's move on to the draft where the Golden State Warriors would end up selecting Quentin Post, who is a center, and he's an older prospect. Okay. He's 24 years old as a center. He's a legit 7-footer. So really good size. And I think he has 3-and-D upside. Those are the type of centers the Golden State Warriors like to look at. There's going to be a big time competition for a lot of these center minutes. And I think, if Quentin Post is a little bit more ready than a 52nd overall pick would suggest, he's certainly capable of, maybe finding some minutes on this team. I mean, you really don't have anyone with that type of size, true 7-foot size, on this roster that is going to be looking for minutes. Kevon Looney's great. TJD is great, but, they're not exactly legit 7-footers that can space the floor and play defense. So I really like the pick, just taking a shot late in the draft at 52 on this Quentin Post guy, and hopefully it works out for him, right? But without further ado, let's get right into my favorite part of these deep dives, which is the roster deep dive. We're going to be going through player by player, what I think about each one, and what my spin on it is. And this might, again, hopefully you guys aren't too triggered with my takes so far in the video. They could be bad. Please let me know it down in the comment section. Warriors fans, I want to hear from you primarily. I mean, I want to hear from everybody, but Warriors fans, I'm sure a lot of you guys are going to disagree with these takes, and that's fine. mind, you can. I'm not saying I know everything about your team. I'm just, I'm just a guy giving takes on the internet. So, if you have some strong feelings about it, please let me know. I genuinely am not trying to give takes that are controversial. Like, that's not what we do on this channel. I'm actually, I really believe all the things I'm saying, even if they are dumb. I want to hear from you guys. So let me know down in the comments what you think, and hopefully you guys will stick around for the roster deep dive. Let's get right into it, folks. So we're going to have to start with the greatest shooter of all time in basketball history. We're going to be starting with Steph Chef. Look at Wardelius Curry. Look at Curry, man. Shout out to Flight Reacts. Listen, Steph Curry, if he plays anything like he did in the US versus Serbia game today, then I think you guys are in for, at minimum, a play-in spot, okay? Steph Curry is still, we really have to look at his longevity and really, just give our flowers, because Steph Curry, even at 36 years old, is playing at an elite level offensively. Last season, 26 points per game on Steph Curry type efficiency. I mean, it's unreal how he's been able to keep this up. One of the things I don't think Steph gets quite enough credit for is his playmaking ability. This is one of the greatest playmakers of all time. On and off the ball playmaking, he's probably the best, player off the ball offensively. He moves without the ball better than anyone. We all know about the shooting ability, but these two things, playmaking and off-ball movement, I think he's all-time great at both of them. Doesn't necessarily get the credit he deserves for them, and he's not actually a bad defender. I don't think even still at his age is a bad defender. He's capable of guarding the perimeter okay. I'm not saying he's a great defender, but I think he is definitely not below average. And if Steph can put together another healthy season, with similar productions, 25 to 30 points per game, this is a lot to ask of a 36-year-old. And people are going to say, well, the front office isn't respecting him by putting a second star around him. They won't trade Brandin Podziemski. That's not really what we're here to talk about. But I do think if Steph is healthy, this team, assuming everything that I said previously with the young players taking a leap and Andrew Wiggins coming back stronger and playing much better than he did last year, this team could have revived energy, and a different look next season without Klay Thompson, just could provide some solid juice to this team's morale, right? And I think you've seen a little bit less of that fun-loving, high octane Warriors arena, over the past season or so since they won that finals, and the energy's been a little bit different. So I think, hopefully with a rejuvenated Wiggins, with some of these young guys improving, that could be returning, and that is something I think really helps the Warriors when they're playing their best basketball. The vibes are just immaculate for them, and hopefully, Steph Curry, again, this is a lot to ask of a 36-year-old, but hopefully if he can carry this team one more season, they could look a lot different next year. And I don't think it's as simple as just adding a second superstar. I think it's more complicated than that, and I think some of the stuff I'm saying is, are parts of the nuance. Steph played a really healthy season last year, 74 games, and unfortunately, the team around him wasn't necessarily the best. I know that, but I just think, there are plenty of things that could go right for this team to where they wouldn't actually necessarily need to go out and get a Lauri Markkanen or a Brandon Ingram. Both of those things, other than Lauri Markkanen, Brandon Ingram, I will say, is probably still on the table somewhat. He still isn't extended with the Pelicans. He's still probably being shopped around. Zach LaVine is another guy I think you could look at, right, for a star player to pair next to Curry. There are players available, so I wouldn't get too discouraged, Warriors fans, until, we know everything that happens. There's plenty of things still in play for this team, those being two of them. But yeah, I just think Steph Curry's value is still all-time high, even next season. Again, if he plays like he did against Serbia today, you guys are in good shape. We got to talk about Andrew Wiggins. Andrew Wiggins in the 2022 finals was your second best player. He really took on the matchup of guys like Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, locking them up night in and night out in those finals. He was much better offensively then, and I think, since that season, he just quite hasn't added the value that you'd hope. Last season really being one of his worst. He had his lowest scoring numbers of any year in his career, not even close, even worse than his rookie numbers scoring wise, and he took a similar volume as well. So that is, very discouraging for a guy you invested so much money into, and having the faith in him that you had. I know there has been things going on with him. I'm not here to like knock the guy or anything. I just think if you look at the numbers, they're not necessarily what you want, and he really took a back seat last season, only playing 27 minutes per game, and we can all agree that production has to be higher, and I think it will be next season. One thing you can't ever knock Andrew Wiggins for is the talent on both ends, right? He is a versatile two-way player, and I think you see more of that next season in a upgraded role. And I think the fact that the Warriors haven't done something massive in this offseason with a trade is a good sign that they still believe in Andrew Wiggins, because if they truly believed Andrew Wiggins was going to look like that next season, I think you would have seen a move done by now for a guy like Lauri Markkanen or Brandon Ingram. The fact that they haven't done that leads me to believe that something has changed with Andrew Wiggins. Maybe it hasn't. I just think that could be a possibility, and I think if the Warriors truly felt like he was going to look like he did last year, they would have made a move. So expect a much better Andrew Wiggins. You know, this is probably going to be your second best player next year. Hopefully he can take that leap back to a complimentary third, second option scorer. And if we see that on both ends, again, this team is very different than they were last season. Draymond Green, you know, another guy maybe a lot of Warriors fans have had kind of enough of, right? And Draymond Green had a big suspension last year. He, you know, for lack of a better term, punched Yusuf Nurkic in the face, okay? And he put Rudy Gobert in a headlock. He did both of those things. He also played really good basketball for your team. And I know Draymond Green has antics, and I know he's annoying, and I know he can be a little bit of a, you know, distraction for this team at times. But at the end of the day, this guy is a Hall of Fame player, okay? I know Draymond Green's 34 years old. I know he is maybe not quite the defender he once was, you know, as that DPOY capable defender. I think he's still one of the better versatile defenders in the league. He's probably your best defender on the team, no doubt. And honestly, you know, if you look at his numbers last year, he actually shot a better three-point percentage than he's ever shot in his career. Almost 40% on about 2.5 attempts per game from three. Like, that is still pretty good production for Draymond Green. He averaged 7 rebounds and 1.4 offensive rebounds as well, and 6 assists. So, you know, he's also, again, probably your most versatile defender. And I think, you know, the production is there, right? And the versatility is there. You're not even mentioning the screen setting. We're not even mentioning the instigator stuff, right? Like, some of that stuff is annoying, but some of that stuff actually is helpful to the Warriors. You know, he gets in people's heads, can take them out of their rhythm and take them out of what they want to do. I think you only see the clips of the bad stuff, right? The Rudy Gobert headlock and the Yusuf Nurkic punch, but you don't see the clips of where he actually gets in another player's head and causes them to have a bad game, right? So he's also just, you know, a guy that works hard, and I think he is the soul of this team. I know it's a little played out at this point. I know people are tired of him, but listen, man, he's the type of guy that you don't realize how much stuff he does until he leaves, okay? Like, he is doing a ton of the dirty work for you guys, and someone's got to do it. And he's a vocal leader as well. Like, this player is not just all talk, okay? He's a great player on both ends. He provides a ton of value on both ends: the playmaking, the ball handling, point forward capabilities, the offensive rebounds, the 50-50 balls, diving on the floor, right? Getting in players' heads, you know, improved three-point shooting last season. Like, versatile defense, you know, all NBA caliber defense. Like, he is just so active on both ends when he's in the game. I think, you know, people are just a little bit too low on Draymond at this point. I know he's annoying, like I said, but come on, man, this is a guy that you want on your team as opposed to someone else's team that you have to play all the time. So maybe a little bit more positivity on Draymond. I don't know. You know, I don't watch every Warriors game. I watch a ton of them, but like, I'm just saying, like, I think we could be a little bit higher on Draymond as far as the good stuff that he does rather than some of the annoying stuff. I know it's there, but I don't know, try to keep that in mind. We talked about how Buddy Hield and De'Anthony Melton are going to impact this team. For one, De'Anthony Melton, you know, I think he's probably your starting two guard, as I mentioned. You know, he's going to be the guy alongside Andrew Wiggins and Draymond Green to probably be one of the better defenders on this team. He can guard 1 and 2. On smaller wings, he can defend a little bit too. He's just a nightmare on the ball. Like, he is a pest. I just think point of attack, like, he's excellent, right? He has good length. He's a great catch and shoot guy as well offensively. He's a smart player. He won't make too many mistakes with the basketball, right? He just seems like he always knows where to be. You know, this is one of the more consistent players for my Sixers as well. So, like, night to night, you're going to get similar value. You're always going to get the same Melton. He might have a down shooting night here and there, but he is a very consistent player. I think he has to be on the floor, you know, 30 minutes a game. Like, he's that good. And I think he's probably your starting two guard. You know, imagine a 2, 3, and 4 of Anthony Melton, Andrew Wiggins, and Draymond Green. Like, that's pretty insane. Like, this is a wing league, and, you know, a lot of wings are going to have issues with those 2, 3, and 4. So I think D'Anthony Melton's a big time upgrade on this backcourt defense. As far as Buddy Hield, again, this is a player that I think at his best is a game changer for an offense, you know, and at maybe his not so best, he is, you know, a low minute rotation player, because throughout the season, you know, he actually kind of fell out of the Sixers rotation in the playoffs because he was passing out of a lot of shots. Again, I don't want to be too negative on Buddy Hield because I actually love the guy. I think he's a great competitor. I think he has a lot of fun playing the game, and it's a lot of fun to watch him. I'm just saying, you know, there are things that you see the shooting numbers and you think, wow, how is that guy, you know, only getting this amount of money? How is nobody really considering this guy as like a big time option? There are things that hold him back. Okay. So I think his athleticism is one of them. I think his, you know, defense is another one, but I just think, you know, in the right situations, there is not a better shooter in the league for what you're going to get out of Buddy Hield other than maybe Steph Curry. Like, when he's open on catch and shoots, he is absolutely money. Like, he will just not miss open shots. When he gets hot, you guys know how great shooters are, you know, watching Golden State games. When he gets hot, he's just like Curry. Like, he just won't miss. They'll just put him up and they won't miss. But I do think him and Klay Thompson are a little bit different of shooters, as I mentioned. You know, Klay Thompson is going to be able to have that height and length to be able to get them off over anyone. Buddy Hield, not as much, right? But, you know, again, I trust Steve Kerr and this coaching staff to be able to put him in situations where he's going to get open threes, okay? And he can shoot them on the move. I just think I wouldn't exactly say it's a one-to-one comparison with what Klay Thompson gives you from the shooting. Just keep that in mind, okay? I'm not trying to be too negative, but Buddy Hield is still a great shooter and still a great value piece for what you got him at. I think he's going to make a big impact on this team, with the shooting. So hopefully that can be the case. Also last year, fun stat, he played 84 games, which is absolutely wild. Look into it if you haven't. But Buddy Hield rules. I love the guy and I wish him the best with the Golden State Warriors, and I think you guys will enjoy him as well. Talked about Kyle Anderson. I think he's your Draymond Green substitution. He comes in and out for Draymond, provides similar things. Now let's get into these young guys, okay? Jonathan Kuminga, he took a big leap last year in his scoring and his role, okay? I know his defense is a little bit concerning at times. I know he's not the most efficient three-point shooter last season, but listen, this is a guy that I think if he takes another leap, this is your second scorer. This is a freak athlete. This is a transition downhill finisher that is just quite frankly pretty rare in this league, okay? And he has the type of upside offensively to become a second leading scorer on this team, hopefully next season. I know he's 21 years old, which is wild because this will be his 4th season in the league, but listen, man, Kuminga provides athleticism in this lineup that, other than a couple guys, isn't going to be much in the lineup. So I think his athleticism, his scoring is just, he might even take a bench role. Like, I don't know what it's going to look like because you have guys like Curry, Melton, Wiggins, Draymond, and Looney and TJD are going to be all looking for starting positions, right? So maybe he's like a scorer off the bench. Warriors fans, let me know down in the comment section what the starting lineup looks like next year. I've said that Melton will probably start. Let me know if that's true down in the comments, okay? Because I actually could be wrong about that. But please let me know if, where Kuminga fits in with all this. Are you going to play Draymond at the center? Like, I don't know. Let me know. One of these guys is not going to be able to start. Probably Kuminga is going to start because of the scoring production. Either way, he's got to have a 30-minute per game role next season. No question about it, right? He is going to be one of the focal points of this team offensively. I think he's certainly capable of that. Hopefully you can see a little bit of a jump in the three-point shooting like you saw in 2023 where it was at 37%. But I think his 16 points a game goes up to something like 20 points a game on a little bit more efficient shooting. And that's probably your guy in the future that's going to be your second option next to Steph Curry. So hopefully he can take that leap. I expect him to for sure. Brandin Podziemski, I can't say enough great things about this guy. I know Warriors fans want him to be traded for Larry Markkinen. Too late, unfortunately, but if you just look at his numbers, you watch him in the summer league, like this is a unique type of player where, one of the best rebounding guards in the league last season, as well as in the summer league, he averaged a double-double, I believe, a really good three-point shooter. He's an efficient offensive player, great playmaker. Like, this guy has a high ceiling as far as utility role player goes. Like, he can actually end up being one of the best players on your team next year. I think he takes a leap as well, right? 9 points a game last season doesn't really do it too much justice because there were times throughout the season where he was scoring a lot more. If he's in a little bit more of a scorer role, I think this is, again, one of the better offensive players on this team, and the rebounding is wild. It's bonkers. I actually don't understand, how he could be so great at rebounding at 6'4" as a guard. I'm gonna make a guess that he actually averages like the 3rd most or 2nd most rebounds on your team next season. It could be a long shot, but we'll see. I just love Podziemski as a do-it-all type of player. He can really do almost everything on the floor that you can ask of him, and I just think his hustle and his energy is contagious, and it adds a lot to any lineup he's in. I think he probably will be a 6-man type of player for you guys, just considering the depth on this team, but him and D'Anthony Melton or him and Buddy Hield could be a great pairing. Like, I just think he is one of the more high upside guys on this team. I understand why they're not trying to trade him. We can argue whether they should or shouldn't, but I'm not saying like they're crazy for not trading him because the upside is immense, okay? So I just think, hopefully he can live up to that, right? But I know Warriors fans wanted him to, be on the trade block with a package for a Brandon Ingram, for a Larry Markkinen. It still could be for a guy like Brandon Ingram, but we'll just have to see if they decide, a package is good enough to trade him for or not. I think right now you got to like understand where they're coming from. Like, Steph is getting older and we want to, put him in positions to win. We still think we can with him, but like, we also don't want to trade our future either. And I think Brandin Podziemski is one of those guys of the future. Besides those guys, there are plenty of role players that can contribute on this team. One of them being Moses Moody, another young player that has defensive upside that has actually improved offensively as well. I mean, last season, doubling his scoring production pretty much. He is a good three-point shooter. 3 attempts per game on 36% last season. He's a guy that I think defensively probably another one of your best backcourt guys. He is a versatile player that I like a lot as a role player, and I think he's probably going to play the 3 most of the time off the bench. You guys can let me know down in the comment section if I'm off on that, but I like Moses Moody a ton for a role player that's still only 22 years old. Gary Payton II, this is a guy that probably is is another guard that's hoping to get a lot of minutes. Defensively is a really good player. He's a great athlete, amazing offensive rebounder, like amazing. He's also a good catch and shoot guy. I mean, last year he shot 36% on 1.3 attempts. The year before, 44%. I mean, this guy is pretty consistent from the catch and shoots. I think earlier in his career, that was the issue with him, was the shooting. Not so much anymore. I think it's more like staying healthy and stuff like that. But I think, you know, this is a great athlete who offensive rebounds the ball well, and that's what the Golden State Warriors love to do, is get guys in the game that can offensive rebound. You know, guards, especially, like you think about Brandin Podziemski, even D'Anthony Melton and Buddy Hield are capable of offensive rebounding. With my Sixers throughout their time there, Draymond Green's a great offensive rebounder, like, you know, Kevon Looney. Like, it's just, this is an offensive rebound type of team, because as we know, the best three-point shots to take are off of offensive rebounds. Those are when you get the most wide open three-pointers. So yeah, Gary Payton, you know, certainly could be in line for a guard, you know, rotation type of player, but we'll just have to see with a lot of guards in this team. You actually could play Buddy Hield at the 3. I think that's possible. A lot of teams ended up doing that. I know my Sixers played him at the 3 a little bit throughout the season last year. He would be a little bit undersized, and you'd probably have to find a better matchup to guard the 3 at times, but I don't think that's out of the question. You know, Podziemski's a bigger guard as well, so it could be like Podziemski in certain lineups, D'Anthony Melton and Buddy Hield. Like, again, you're not necessarily the biggest backcourt in that case, but like, that's a lot of versatility right there, you know. But yeah, Kevon Looney, another great role player on this team, will probably end up being, you know, either your starting center or backup center, right? He's just a guy that provides a lot of hustle and energy at that 5 position. You know, he is a great rebounder, probably one of the best offensive rebounders in the league. You know, he's a double machine. You know, back in like 2022, 2023, he was playing every game for this team, starting the vast majority of them at that 5 position. He's a great pick and roll finisher. He is intense on the glass. Okay, so I think he's probably either your starting center or backup center. I think he's in line for a little bit more of a bigger role from the center position this year. You know, I don't think he's gonna have a smaller role. I think he's gonna have a bigger role because you lose Dario Saric, and that's probably increases his role, if anything. So look for Kevon Looney to jump from like 16 minutes per game to like, you know, 20 or so. Okay, and then Trayce Jackson-Davis. You know, this was one of the surprises of the season last year. You know, last season ended up getting drafted at 57th in the 2nd round. So one of the last picks of the draft from Washington, and you get him in, and he looks like a fundamental, you know, great athlete, undersized center, or, you know, plus size power forward. Like, he is a big man for sure. I get that the height is 6'9". That's probably why he fell so much in the draft, but this is a fundamental player. I know he's an older prospect as well. It could have contributed to it as well, but he actually ended up starting 16 games for you. And I think this guy has another chance with this young core to take a big leap next season. I think he's a really good offensive rebounder. I think he is a great lob finisher, probably the best lob finisher on this team. I also think he's a great passer, and I think, you know, he is going to provide some of the better rim protection on this team of anybody. I think like him and Draymond Green are really going to have to step up in that regard, because I do think interior defense was one of the issues with this team last year. I think he could be capable of stepping into a role like that. He did average a block per game last year, and I think he has the athleticism to be able to hang in those, you know, low post situations. I think he gets a bigger role as well. I think he's either your backup 5 or your starting 5. He moves around great for a big man. He's got good mobility from what I understand. I just really like this guy as a, you know, Warriors player. He fits in super well with this team. He can pass, he can rebound, he can dribble, he can finish lobs. He's a, you know, great finisher. 70% from the field last year. I mean, this guy is, you know, he's got to have a bigger role in this team next year, no question about it. And you know, for as far as impact players next season, I think that's about it. But I think, you know, for the Warriors this season, you really bolstered your depth, right? You have young players that can get a lot better, like TJD, like Brandin Podziemski, and like Jonathan Kuminga. What are the odds that none of those players get a ton better next season? I think Brandin Podziemski, Jonathan Kuminga, and TJD are all going to take big leaps next year. I think you see that day one, right? Like, I think Kuminga is probably the best chance of anyone on this team being your second leading scorer. Him and Wiggins are really going to have to step up in that role. You know, both of those guys are going to have to average from between 15 and 20 efficiently. I think they're both capable of that. You know, we've seen both of these guys do that throughout their time, right? Like Andrew Wiggins, that's what he's done throughout his entire career other than last year. And Kuminga, you know, broke out and did that last season for you guys. So I think if both of those guys average 15 to 20, you got a good shot. You know, D'Anthony Melton is going to make a splash impact on this team, assuming health isn't an issue, right? Again, consistent, high quality catch and shoot guy, right? He has playmaking capabilities. He can attack closeouts. He's athletic, right? He is probably, you know, your best perimeter defender other than like Moses Moody or Andrew Wiggins. I just think he adds adds a ton, you know. And then Buddy Hield, you could mix him in almost any lineup. You know, he moves well without the ball. He's a great all-time high efficiency shooter. Him running around those Draymond Green screens are going to be nuts. Those pin down screens are going to be so good for him. You know, just firing out of the corner and, you know, catching and shooting quickly on the move. He's going to be so good at that role. Steph Curry, you can expect similar things, you know, all-time great things next season as well. You know, it doesn't matter how old he is. When he's at this level, you know, it's just a matter of what you can put around him. And I think they actually upgraded, you know, this season. I mean, you talked about the depth. Instead of having one Klay Thompson to do all those things, now you add D'Anthony Melton, Buddy Hield, Kyle Anderson. Your young guys are a year better. Like, there are more players that can contribute to this team night to night. I think they can do that on a similar level to Klay Thompson. I think even better of a level than Klay Thompson, considering Klay Thompson's only one player, right? So it's not necessarily a knock on Klay. It's just like, these are, you know, three guys with similar capabilities as far as impact goes. You know, they're different types of players, but they can impact the game super well. And look out for the young guys to break out next season. You know, Brandin Podziemski is going to have a way better season next year. Kuminga is going to take a leap in scoring. Wiggins is going to be the biggest X factor of this team. If he plays like an all-star, you could see this team in the top 5 in the conference. Like, that's how good Steph Curry is and how good these depth pieces are. And again, trade isn't out of the question. You know, I just think the Warriors are going to have a newfound energy next year, and that's why I think they're back. You know, I think they're back for next season. Like, the Warriors are back because of that newfound energy they're going to have. You bring in Buddy Hield, D'Anthony Melton. I can speak personally. Those guys have immaculate energy. They're always smiling. They love to compete. They love the game of basketball, right? They're going to add to that Warriors culture. And, you know, they just go out there and have fun and play loose. And I think that's what the Warriors are going to do next season. It's been a little bit different the last 2 years. The energy has been down, okay? I don't see that persisting. And I think that's why the Warriors are back next season. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe to the channel. We're going to be uploading deep dives for every team in the league by the time the offseason is over. We're already 20 teams through this deep dive series, and we will be dropping them every day until they're done. So subscribe for more content just like this. Warriors fans, again, I know you're probably going to have issues with some of my takes, but please, you know, just try to be respectful in the comments. That's all I can ask of you guys. You know, I'm trying to be respectful to you. Please, you know, reciprocate that if you can. I really respect and appreciate you guys for taking your time to watch this non-Warriors fans tell you about your team. So, you know, hopefully we can keep it lighthearted, and I'm trying to put a positive spin on a lot of this stuff. So there's a ton of negativity and toxicity in this NBA community. You know, I'm not saying I'm perfect. I can add to that at times, but I'm really making an effort throughout the recent months on the channel to try to go in a different direction with this channel. I want this community to be a positive place people can go and just watch stuff about strictly hoops. You know, nothing, there's so much going on in the world, and I just want to create a distraction for people. You know, I think that's important to have for people. You know, when things are tough or whatever it is, you know, you could just come to a place every day and just not think about all the serious stuff going on in your life. So I think that's kind of what I'm trying to do. You know, I don't want to add too much negativity to this community, because I think there are a ton of great creators in this community. There are a ton of great voices and people in this community. I just think maybe we could be a little bit more positive with it sometimes, right? And that's what I'm trying to do in this deep dive series for every team. So hopefully you guys appreciate that. Again, subscribe to the channel. Thank you guys so much for 13K. It means a lot to me. And I will catch you guys in the next one. You know, drop a like on the video. I'll see you guys tomorrow in the next deep dive. And hopefully you guys can tell me your feedback down below if you're a Warriors fan or not. Anyone, right? The Warriors are back, man. The energy is going to be great next season. I'll catch you guys tomorrow. This is your boy DeHave, and as always, peace.